The Greensboro Coliseum, it's one of the most important venues in the Mid-Atlantic territory and had been for years. By this time, you're no stranger to working in front of large crowds, but would you say that Greensboro was the largest venue or crowd that you had worked in front of up to this point?
Yeah, definitely.
And, Jake, we've talked about it before. During this time, you're still kind of feeling out your character. Obviously you've got the cowboy gimmick going on with the rattlesnake on the hat, and watch some of your promos, and they're really good, but they're not what they would be when you become this sinister kind of character that we're going to see down the road. So all of that, I say all that to say, how comfortable were you in front of these big crowds in a place like the Greensboro Coliseum at this time?
I was guarded, you know. I was still seeking, and especially with Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen across the ring,
Yeah.
that's a tough day's work right there.
Now, I had the pleasure recently of driving Tommy Dreamer to an event for International Wrestling Cartel here in Pittsburgh. And on the way, Tommy and I had a conversation about when he was 19 years old and he had a match with Dick Slater. And so 19-year-old green kid, I think he said he had 30 matches under his belt by that point. And he's coming to Dick Slater like, hey, Mr. Slater, I was trained by, Johnny Rods, and wanted to introduce myself and see what you want to do in the match. Apparently, Dick Slater gave him like just a nod, and that's all he got.
Yeah,
Tried it a couple more times over the course of the night, and just got a nod every time. So he's like, I guess I'll just do it in the ring. I, I say all that to say, here you are, you're with Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen. You're still a fairly young man at the time too. Is it like, do you just accept before, without even talking to them, I'm not going to get anything out of these guys, or do you attempt to go up to them and say like, hey, what do you guys want to do tonight?
no, I'm not gonna get shit. Nothing.
Like, again, you're still, I think you're in your mid-20s at this point, like, intimidated getting into the ring under those circumstances?
A little bit, a little bit, especially with Hanson.
Was he, like, a little bit gruff? I know where Oli certainly was.
Oh yeah, he was a lot of bit, not a little bit.
So, under those circumstances, even you, like, a guy with your knowledge up to this point, it's like, just keep your mouth shut, listen to these guys, and do what they say, right?
Right.
Oh man. Well, we're talking about Oli and Stan, who are both really well established, and Stan was splitting time between the States and Japan during this time. I have to imagine this would be the first time you were around him, or did you cross his path in Japan before?
I crossed my path with him in Louisiana.
Oh, so even earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you recall about it?
Being scared to death.
So you had worked a match with him before.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a bad experience.
So what happened during this match?
Well, there were about 20 Japanese photographers there because Stan, was touring Japan all the time. And they sent these photographers over there to get footage of him in the States. And it just so happened that he's wrestling me. Well, my finish at the time was a knee lift.
Yep.
And I gave him a knee lift close to the ropes. Referee went down 1, 2, and Stan put his foot up, but he missed the rope.
Ooh.
2, 3. So now all these photographers are taking pictures of me beating Hansen.
Holy shit.
Hansen sprung to his feet, grabbed the referee by his hair, and shit canned him over the top rope.
Like a shoot shit can.
Yeah, the guy didn't get close to grabbing the rope. He wound up third row. Then he turns around and sees me, and he just comes over and clubs me, shoots me into the ropes, and gives me that friggin' clothesline from hell.
Ooh, in the mouth.
Oh, it just ripped my fucking neck off, man.
Oh god.
I went down and rolled outside the ring, and a fan comes over and gives me his chair. He goes, "Here, Jake, go back in there with this chair." And I looked at the chair and I looked at Stan. I said, "Fuck you, man." And I threw the chair down and left. Oh God.
So Stan is just rip snorting mad out there in the ring. I mean, like, when you get to the back again, it's I mean, even earlier in your career than at this point. So what's it like when he comes back? Are you avoiding him? Does he come
Yeah,
find you?
you hear him screaming in the other locker room.
Holy shit. I mean, intimidating. And man, that clothesline of his, I mean, it's famous across the world because Hansen was legally blind and was still working in the ring.
Yeah, he'd shoot you in, and then you'd see him looking for you,
Holy shit.
and you're like 5 feet away.
Oh,
He's got
no.
cocked back, and as soon as he sees you, man, he just launches that thing.
Just like uncorks it and doesn't matter where it fucking hits you. He just wants to
Nope,
make sure he hits you.
damn straight.
So I'm sure that you took your fair share of lumps from him over the years because I know that this isn't your first time wrestling and probably isn't your last if I had to guess. Do you remember what like did he ever catch you with one in the mouth, knock out a tooth, anything like that?
No, no, never no teeth.
Man, thank goodness for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Aside from that, obviously getting the shit beat out of you, what's it like working with a guy who's visually impaired? Like, does it change the way that you approach the match?
Not really.
No.
Really, no. You just kind of go out there and feel your way through it. I mean, I wrestled George Weinroth, who was legally blind, you know, and I wrestled him probably 20 times.
Wow.
And it was quite interesting. You know, he would give you stuff by touching your arm. You know, with one tackle, it was 2 dots on your arm. One tackle drop down with 1 dot and a slide on the wrist. You know, it was just he communicated by touch.
That is beyond incredible. Like the idea of somebody like and you having the wherewithal to like if you're in the middle of the ring, the adrenaline's pumping, and you've got to pay attention to this guy who's like tapping you and sliding his hand on you.
Right, right.
That's amazing, and it's strange to hear that because we always hear that wrestling is such like a pirate ship, especially back in those days. But here's a promoter giving this guy who's legally blind this opportunity. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, he was a good cat, man.
Well, Stan was one of the most famous gaijins at the time, very well compensated for his time working in Japan. And during this time, Jake, you're still a young man yourself, as we've said. You're making good progress, but you've got a wife and kids, and you aren't getting paid the way that you wanted to be from this territory at the time.
No, I
So
wasn't.
I know that you didn't like Japan, but when you see a guy like Stan just wielding all this power, both in the US and in Japan, was there ever a thought of trying to get yourself a more permanent spot over there?
No, I thought about it briefly, but that wasn't my bag of nuts, man.
Just being so far away from your family, or what was it?
That was the main thing, just being gone for a month or 6 weeks at a time. What happened to me was the first trip I made over there was 12 weeks.
Holy shit.
And that kind of ruined it for me. You know, I wasn't with the big company. I didn't get all the perks that the guys got. I was with the low ball team, and we went to the smaller towns. And of course, accommodations weren't quite what you expected. You got a rice mat on the floor. You know,
Holy shit.
yeah, it was catch as catch can. But I learned a lot. I made a little money, and but it wasn't my thing to go to Japan. Although I went 4 or 5 trips and did well over there.
Good money.
Yeah, it was. Certainly was.
Yeah, it's man, you and I have talked a little bit about your first run in Japan. We're going to talk about it more kind of in long form as the podcast goes on. When you had the face paint, but then you were also paired up with a couple unique guys over there, including the hippie, that guy that you've talked to us
Yeah.
about here before. Really great performer, and we'll take a deeper dive on him. But I like, you said that you were over there for 12 weeks. I mean, listeners, it's pretty simple math. That's 1/3 of an entire year that you had to be over there in Japan away from your family. I mean, that's enough to leave anybody feeling like, hey, I don't give a fuck what the money's like. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it was tough, man. It was tough.